And I don't want to increase the area of unexpected offense-taking that's been so hugely broadened by the sensitivities of a religion that has the answer to everything. Well, now just you transfer yourself to Somalia last week. Girl of 13, probably out for the first time unsupervised in her life. Things must have been very bad if she was allowed out without male supervision to begin with, but there's enough chaos to explain that. She's immediately pounced upon by a group of older men and very thoroughly raped and sodomized and beaten. And she goes to the religious court for redress, and the religious court knows its business, and it knows its texts very well. And it says, we don't know that it's true that what you say, that men abused you in this manner, but we can tell you've had sex. In fact, judging by your injuries, we can tell you've had a great deal of sex lately. But you're not married. So you're guilty of adultery. So now, before your wounds have stopped hurting, you're going to be buried up to your waist in hot sand, and laughing men will now take part in the only other cultural activity that gratifies the male sex in that part of the world, which is stoning a young woman to death. The people who did this knew exactly what they were doing, and they were in perfect conformity with their holy books, and they absolutely do not believe that anything happens randomly. They are not under the illusion that heaven is indifferent. They're not under the illusion that we are biologically created, that we're here because of the laws of natural selection and random mutation. They don't believe anything of the sort. They're utterly consoled by the idea that heaven intervenes and cares about every action. Otherwise, they wouldn't put themselves to the trouble of raping, torturing, and murdering a 13-year-old whose last moments you might want to take just a few seconds to imagine. The third form of plagiarism that it takes, which is the plagiarism of Islam from both Judaism and Christianity, the competition between monotheism has become really outright menacing. And the real responsibility of citizens is to hold it down, is to resist theocratic bullying and the superstitions that underlie it. Islam makes very large claims for itself. Very large claims indeed. It claims to be the last and final religion, the last and final revelation. When you see bumper stickers, everyone says you can't reduce major things to a bumper sticker. It's not my idea to have bumper stickers saying Islam is the solution. It's a well-known slogan actually of parties associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. They say Islam is the solution for everything. It takes care of all your life and the one to come. Sexuality, political economy, banking, diet, relations with other religions, everything. It's a total solution. What is creepy about the word total? I hope I don't have to tell an audience like this. It's the first 5 letters of the word totalitarian. It's absolute. It's absolute. It's all-inclusive. It's unanswerable. And oddly, for a religion that makes such large claims, notice another thing about Islam, it doesn't particularly like having these claims questioned or scrutinized. In other words, just as there is with all religions an inverse relationship between the claims they make and the evidence they can produce for them, you must have noticed that, with Islam, a younger religion, and perhaps therefore more in its first flush, there's an extraordinarily strong willingness to say that any challenge to its absolutist claims is by definition profane. And profanity and blasphemy can be the antecedent to very severe punishment, and often are, for Muslims and for non-Muslims. And this is not a road of peace, in my submission. You can tell it when you see the extreme Muslims talk. They cannot wait. They cannot wait for death and destruction to overtake and overwhelm the world. They can't wait for what I would call, without ambiguity, a final solution. And need I add that there is no good Muslim who does not say that Allah tells us we can never give up an inch of Muslim land, and that once our mosques are built, there can be no retreat. It would be a betrayal. It would lead you straight to hell. In other words, yes, they gibber and jabber, all of them, the 3 religions. Yeah, you're quite right. God awards land. It's just you've got the wrong title. No. This is what I mean when I say the religion is a real danger to the survival of of civilization, and that it makes this banal, regional, national dispute, which if reduced to its real proportions is a nothingness, if it makes that not just lethally insoluble, but is drawing in other contending parties who really wish, openly wish, for an apocalyptic conclusion to it, as also bodied forth in the same scriptural texts. In other words, that it will be the death of us all, the end of humanity, the end of the world, the end of the whole suffering vale of tears, which is what they secretly want. This is a failure of the parties of God, and it's not something that happens because people misinterpret the texts. It's because they believe in them. That's the problem. Thank you. If the Quranic prescriptions on amputation and mutilation and stoning were all followed, if every thief in Egypt had their hand removed, no work could be done. So they don't do it. They should do it. They're ordered to do it, but they don't. They're ordered to kill the unbeliever in specific terms. In the Hadith, not the Quran, but in the sayings of the Prophet, which have the same theological and moral weight in the teaching, it is said that anyone who tries to change their religion from Islam, to apostatize, must be killed. They can't do it. They should. It's a divine mandate, but they don't. Because the innate morality that belongs to all of us, fortunately, comes to save us from the wickedness that comes from the texts. Well, Sharia just means law. I mean, all people who say Sharia law are making an elementary mistake, and of course it's not the case that every thief has their hand lopped off in Muslim society, or every adulterer gets stoned, and so on. I'm perfectly sure that's not just because it would diminish the labor force so radically, or so to speak, disable it. I think it's more because of something I've claimed to notice elsewhere, which is that religion is man-made. And so there are enormous discrepancies in how these things are promulgated and also how they are enforced. And most countries and societies come quite early and easily to the conclusion that their own religions are, in one form or another, not really practicable. After all, in Saudi Arabia, a woman can't even drive a car, whereas in Iran she can vote, not for much, but she can, as much as a man can, let's say. Her vote can be stolen and degraded as much as her husband's or her brother. There's an infinite variation. I don't know. I can't shake what I saw once on the BBC from someone whose career in London I followed. I don't know if you know him. You wouldn't like him. A guy called Anjum Chowdhury. He's a very well-known noisemaker around London, complaining about secularism, Judaism, all this kind of thing. And he'd been in trouble with the law a few times, and was interviewed on the BBC, went on about how nothing would change until the green flag of Islam was flying over Downing Street and Buckingham Palace and so forth. And was asked, I thought quite mildly by the BBC interviewer, he said, well, if this is the way you feel about Sharia and about total Islamic rule, wouldn't you feel happier moving to a country where they already had it? And which is, a polite question, but a rather cheap one. But still, what didn't prepare me for the answer? Chowdhury looked straight at the guy and straight into camera and said, what makes you think this is your country? I thought it was a very good question. Now, why do you feel, I think I know partly why you feel, why do you feel it's necessary to affirm that? And of course a Muslim should learn the language, should obey the laws, should observe the customs and so on. Most immigrants don't feel they, so to speak, absolutely have to say that. The answer, I suspect, is that it's embarrassing to notice that in places like as far apart as Sweden and as Spain, there are groups of people who say their countries should be part of the caliphate and that that's why they've come here. And if it wasn't for those people, you wouldn't be in this position. So it seems to me that in order to be consistent, you should fear them and dislike them, find them morally and intellectually repulsive, at least as much as, if not more, than I do. And I don't say that you don't, but I do think that is the urgent priority. On the lady's question about where would be the best country to live if you were a Muslim and wanting to be a member of a sexual or gender minority, or I think she said a female or a homosexual. So hard to confuse. Actually, the easiest place for you to live in that case would probably be, I was thinking about it while Professor Ramadan was talking, would probably be, this will be my closing statement, would almost certainly be either Bosnia-Herzegovina or Kosovo. Culturally Muslim, democratic, open societies in southern and Balkan Europe that were saved from obliteration by the power of the United States, which has never had a word of thanks for what it did in that matter. And which remains a secular country with a godless constitution.
That's a note on which we can end.
Which is the last best hope of humanity. Thank you.
All right.